Ciao, homie!
2021 official Strongman Games had just a ton of action with so much data and analysis that's going to take quite some time to compile, but frankly, I don't think anybody else on YouTube is going to give it to you, so I'm going to commit to try to get that to you. And today I have the 2021 official Strongman Games results for Event 2, the car walk, for all of the women's classes. Let's start off with the 64 kilogram and under women. So before we get into the groups, let me just give you a caveat. They weren't able, with this much action, going to give us all of the points for every single thing. So I do have the total points after 2 events, the running points for all of the women's classes, and that's what I will give you. I don't know what the points were for the individual car walk events. So starting off with Group 1, we had Joelle Pesci. She was in Group 1, took 3rd place in this 3-person group. She did make it the whole way, though, and that gives her a total of 11 points after 2 events. Group 1 also had Cassandra Concepcion. Her car had side-to-side action. She was out to a strong lead and put it down a little short of halfway. Then she was turning to the right a bit with a few more drops there. She got it straightened out, but was overtaken by Nadia Morrison by this time, who ended up winning the group. Then we have Nadia Morrison, how we mentioned. She was in 2nd place most of the way, but past Concepcion after she made that inadvertent right turn, as I call it, near the end. Looks like there's a white mark on the tire that needs to cross the line, which is what I'm noticing at this point. The tires don't spin, they're locked in place, so when that white mark matches the white mark of the line and passes it, you count it as finishing the course. So overall, after 2 events, 12 points for Cassandra, 15 for Nadia Morrison. We then go to Group 2. So Group 2 had Siobhan Holdridge, and she came in 2nd in her group, but was considerably short of the finish line. 10 points overall after 2 events for Siobhan. Group 2 also had Kim Scott, my friend Kim Scott from Colorado. So I was counting at this point the white and orange alternating strips on the ground. So the whole course is about 6.5 strips because the orange starts halfway before the start line and halfway after. So when I give you distances, for Kim, it was 3 out of 6.5 strips, so a little short of halfway. It seemed like a tough lift for her. She collapsed out of the standing position a second or two before the time limit, so I don't know if it was exhaustion or a breathing thing. I haven't had a chance to ask her yet, but that was Kim in Group 2, giving her a total after 2 events of 5 points. We then had Jessica Wong also in Group 2. It looked like they were putting down that first orange strip again before they started. Like it was in the staff's hands, so I don't know why they pick it up and then put it back in place. So, but something I noticed during this particular run. Wong was in last place the whole way, struggling to even get the back tires past the starting line. She got enough points to get her to a total of 3 points after 2 events now. Also in Group 2 had Hannah Cold Iron. So Hannah put it down a little bit past halfway down the track. She had 4 drops total and a big effort to get it across toward the end. She seemed totally relieved afterwards, and this brings her to a total of 14 points after 2 events. We then moved to Group 3, and Group 3 had Andreen Helgeson, who did about 3.5 out of 6.5 of those strip lengths. So she was 2nd place in the group, 6 points overall after 2 events. Morgan Quimby was also in Group 3. She has a total of 1 point after the 2 events, so not doing as great as maybe she would have liked. She gets about half the car over the start line, last place in the group, and really struggled for the whole minute time limit on this particular event. Group 3 also had Chloe Brennan, so she was all the way to the end when everyone else was just getting started. It was quite a sight to behold. A perfect run, making up for her 0 on the log in Event 1. She was the fastest of all competitors by about 7.5 seconds at the point that she went. No drops at all, and walking very fast and smoothly through the whole course. She's pushing up the crossbar with her hands, I noticed, so this is a yoke that's sort of built into a car, kind of a narrow yoke built into the car, and you have lots of choices for hand placement, you know, inside the yoke, although that would have been tough with the yoke this narrow, behind the yoke, wrapped around the yoke. Hers was pushing up on the crossbar, which I found really interesting, but worked well for her. She did very, very well here. 13.5 second run for Chloe, one of the few times that they were in fact able to share with us. And Chloe, 19 points overall after 2 events. Group 3 also had Lori McDougall, so she was just over 1 car length over the start line, so not so great for her. About 2 of those strip lengths out of 6.5. 3rd place in her group, 4 points overall after 2 events. We then moved to Group 4, and Group 4 had Joanne Mulligan in it, so even with Varecchia for the first 10 seconds or so, but then Varecchia seemed to take over and got across with only 2 drops. Joanne was fast, but overshadowed by Chloe Brennan and her lightning speed. Mulligan was second in her group, a total of 8 points after 2 events. Jillian Funk was also in Group 4. She was last in the group, struggling to get going across the start line at all, but 15.5 points after 2 events for Jillian. And Group 4 also had another one of my friends, Christine Matthews, who I also root very big for. I noticed her hands were wrapped around the yoke, so I'm wondering if the yoke is just too narrow for some of the athletes to be able to press against the insides, or if some athletes just don't feel like that's the optimal hand placement, but she placed third in her group. Total of 24 points for Christine, though, at this point, which is a really, really good total. And the aforementioned Antonia Varecchia, Group 4 as well. She was the only one across the line in that particular group, took first place in her group, and she was, at this point, 26.5 point total after 2 events. We then go into Group 5, and that group had Rhiannon Lovelace in it, and Rhiannon was second place in her group, a very, very fast time, and Rhiannon with a huge 35-point total now after the first 2 events, doing extremely well, putting herself in a great position. And then Shannon Clifford, who I became a big fan of after UK's Strongest Woman this year, also in Group 5. She had the best start of everyone, but third in the group after a strong run. But at this point, only 1 point behind Rhiannon Lovelace with a total of 34 points after the first 2 events. And so I probably mentioned this during my log press video as well. When I saw Shannon compete in an open class at UK's, I thought, put her in her own weight class and she's going to do some incredible things. And she in fact did during official Strongman Games, which you'll learn more about as I go through more of the events. Holly Mcrae also in Group 5. She has a total of 23 points after 2 events. She was last in this group, however. Made it about halfway down the course, but this was a strong, strong group, so tough for Holly. Kate Connolly also in Group 5, so she went against Mcrae, Clifford, and Lovelace, as I mentioned. Kate won the heat, and Rhiannon was more steady at the end to edge out Shannon Clifford, but she was outdone by Kate Connolly, and Shannon actually slowed down a bit toward the end. Kate ends up winning this group, a 36-point total at this point, so I believe probably in first place at this point after 2 events. And then those were the results for everybody who competed in the 64 kilogram and under women at the 2021 official Strongman Games, Event 2, the car walk. Let's have a look at the 73 kilo and under. And at this time, I'd like to let you know that this video is being sponsored by our good friends at Garage Gym Life Media. If you like some of the analysis I've done on domestic contests in the past and want to know some more about the fine folks who are putting together and streaming some of those contests, I'm going to let John Greaves III, the founder of Garage Gym Life Media, tell you a little more about it.
Training in a home gym, especially if you're training by yourself, can be tough because sometimes you just don't have the motivation to go in your garage or your basement and get it done. And that's why we stream competitions every month on the Garage Gym Life Media YouTube channel. I'm John Greaves III, founder of Garage Gym Life Media, and after 20 years of training in a home gym, I can tell you that there's some days when I just don't feel like training. And those are the days when I put on some sort of training video or other strength-related content to give me the extra motivation I need to get in there and get it done. There is nothing more motivating than seeing people achieving their goals at a powerlifting meet or a strongman competition. And that's why month after month, we provide that content to you right there in the comfort of your own home on our YouTube channel. Plus, we leave it up forever so you can always just throw it on in the background anytime you need that extra dose of motivation to get you going. And that's why, if you're not already a subscriber to Garage Gym Life Media, I invite you to take advantage of this opportunity to add this powerful training tool into your arsenal, because I want you to succeed right there in the best gym in town.
So starting off in Group 1, we had Allison Thorne. Allison was second place in her group after being neck and neck for the first half. She didn't get much further than halfway down the course. 5 points after 2 events for Allison. Caitlyn Hayes was also in Group 1. She was out faster and had fewer drops than Thorne, but did not seem to quite finish the course. She was having a lot of trouble picking it back up near the end, which seemed to be a problem for a lot of the athletes. Like, once you've run out of gas and put it down, it's hard to get that heavy of a car back up. This weight class, running with a 550-pound car walk, which is the same weight, ironically, as what the 64 kilo and under women did, so I was a little confused by that. 7 points total after 2 events for Caitlyn. We then go to Group 2, which had Megan Tomei. She ends up second in her group, 12 points after 2 events for Megan. Bailey Desheen was also in Group 2. She was rocketing down the course and then aquaplaned, as Rodzi put it, I would probably call it hydroplaned in the US, but he called it aquaplaned, which sounds even cooler. It was kind of turning almost from the very beginning. It twisted sideways, and then she tried to crab walk it sideways and then twisted it back, but then Taylor Woods snuck in for the win, and Megan Tomei got in for second as well while this adjustment was being done, so unfortunate for Bailey. 10 points total after 2 events. Group 2 also had Taylor Woods, as we mentioned. She won the group, passing the crab walking to Sheen. 15-point total for her after 2 events. Laura Romilly was in Group 3, so she had second place in her group after starting neck and neck with Rilikova, but then being slowly taken over. She had 9 points after 2 events. Group 3 also had Sandra Wells, and she placed third in her group. She was slightly ahead of Christina, maybe 4 out of 6.5 of those strip lengths across the course, so a little bit more than halfway. 3 points total after 2 events for Sandra. Group 3 also had Veronika Rilikova. So Rilikova bounced a tire, making her stop while she was in the lead, but amazingly still won, so 13-point total for Rilikova after 2 events. And the aforementioned Christina Bangma, 1 point after 2 events, struggling a bit in this weight class. I expected her to compete 64, but not sure what happened there, but struggling a bit here. She's kind of struggled with the car walk from the beginning, scored last in her group, and made it about a little less than halfway. I would call it 3 out of 6.5 of those strip lengths. We then move into Group 4. Group 4 had Megan Haag from the U.S., so Megan doing really well. She has a 20.5-point total after 2 events here. She had the fastest start in the group, put it down at about 3.5 out of 6.5 of those colored lengths. Lots of drops near the end, which was common with a lot of athletes. Got across, but with a couple seconds left on the time limit, and second in her group for Megan. Janie James also in Group 4. She has 6 points after 2 events. Third place in her group. A good run, about 5.5 out of 6.5 strip lengths, so close to the end, but not quite there. And then we had Rachel Greathead, who was also in Group 4. She had a substantial win in the group. She overtook Megan Haag and kind of glided across, won without controversy, won by a substantial margin. And she is at 28.5 points after the first 2 events, so a very, very high total for Rachel Greathead. And then also in Group 4, we had Christine Galvin. So Christine was last in the group, did not complete the course. And that brings us to Group 5. So Group 5 had Bobby Sundberg in it, and she has an amazing total, 34 points for Bobby Sundberg after the first 2 events. In Group 5, it was almost a photo finish with her and Lyndon Reed, but she edged out Lyndon Reed for second place in the group. Lyndon Reed was barely edged out by Sundberg, as I mentioned, ended up coming in third in the group. However, a 33-point total after the first 2 events, a great, great total for her. And then Group 5 also had Erin Walclett, who was, I'll mention again here, this was the closest of all the groups, but Erin did edge out a win just above Sundberg and Reed, who were very close to her. Erin with 35 total points after the first 2 events. And then we had Jessica Mitchell also in Group 5. As I mentioned, this was the closest of all the races in this weight class. Jessica gets about 4 out of 6.5 of those colored lengths across, but then the repick was too hard after she had to put it down. She tried to the very end, though. You got to give her credit. She really did try to the very end. And a 16.5-point total for Jessica Mitchell, who's been on my show twice. Go catch those videos if you haven't yet, in the car walk. We then have Group 6, so Nancy Johnson, who was also recently on my show. You should check that one out as well. A great interview there. She went in Group 6 and was third in her group with a fast time behind the blistering Kennedy and Murray, who we'll talk about in a minute. 34-point total for Nancy Johnson, so very, very close to the lead after 2 events. Then we had Jordan Beach. So Jordan had a good run to finish, but still in last place. Not slow, though. This was just a very, very tough group. And 29 points total after 2 events for Jordan. Jody Kennedy in Group 6 went head-to-head with Erin Murray. Erin hits a tire at the very end, and Jody passes her and wins it. It was a photo finish there. Jody with 41 total points now after 2 events. And then we have Erin Murray, super fast time, was leading much of the way, and then Jody Kennedy was coming back on her, then a head-to-head at the very end, and Erin hit that tire at the very end, and Jody wins it, as we mentioned. So Erin comes in second, Jody Kennedy comes in first in that particular group, and there's the 1-point difference in total where Jody Kennedy, after 2 events, 41 points, an amazing total, and Erin Murray, an also amazing total of 40 points after the first 2 events. Those are the results for the 2021 official Strongman Games women's 73 kilo and under class. Let's have a look at the 82 kilogram and under women's class. For those of you always tuning in to see my detailed analysis and my spreadsheets and love what you're watching and want access to them yourselves, I do offer that now as part of my YouTube channel membership level 2. So you can go over to my YouTube channel, click the join button as you see here, and then I have 3 different levels. So level 1 gets you all kinds of customized badges, and then you get custom emojis to use on live streams. You get member shoutouts every month, gets members only community posts, a whole bunch of different behind the scenes stuff and all, just in level 1. At an extremely reasonable price. Level 2 gets you access to all my Strongman analytics spreadsheets, everything I ever create or ever will create. I add links to that in the membership community for that, and then you can be a live guest on my show as well. Just wanted to let you know that memberships are available at extremely reasonable prices, and you can help support the channel that way as well. Now on to today's content. The 82 kilogram and under women's class for the 2021 official Strongman Games car walk, we start off with Samantha Gable in Group 1. She completed the course without a drop. She passed Crawford when she put it down and gets first place in the group. Running points for her after the first 2 events, 10 points. Ashley Crawford also in Group 1. She was out first, put it down about halfway, then finishes the course, becomes in second in the group. 5 total points after 2 events for Ashley. Group 1 also had Malin Anderson, and she struggled for most of the course. Unfortunately, finished 3rd in the group, did not complete the course. We then moved to Group 2, and Group 2 has Abigail Deal, who was first place in her group. I didn't see her drop it, but camera angles, switch from time to time, so I might have missed it. She pulled ahead when Julia put it down. Not as fast as Julia, but more consistent, and kind of pulls ahead of her there. 8 points after 2 events. Rebecca Cumpsey, also in Group 2, she was second place in her group. She was out to the best start, and 14 points for Rebecca after 2 events. Group 2 also had Brittany Areola. She was 3rd place in her group. 4 points for Brittany after 2 events. And Group 2 also had Julia Tomaszewski, and she was 4th place or last place in her group. She powered ahead of everyone for the first half, but then put it down and had issues getting it going again and was passed by all of her fellow competitors. We then moved to Group 3. Group 3 has Hannah Brock, and she was 2nd place in her group. She was ahead of Nadia after Nadia's tire touched, but we'll get to that in a minute. Let's actually look at, all of those folks together. So Group 3 had Hannah Brock, Sandra Bradley, Anna Vaius, and Nadia Stowers. So now let's talk about Hannah Brock a bit. She was 2nd place in her group. She was ahead of Nadia Stowers after Nadia's tire touched, but then put it down just short of the line, so they made her pick it back up while Nadia adjusted and passed her for the win. It was high drama in this particular group. 4th place went to Sandra Bradley, who finished the course right at the time limit. She was looking either emotional or in pain, and I could imagine this sort of event would put you in some kind of pain. But she put it right on the line with about 2 or 3 seconds left, and it looked like they made her lift it and get it over the line. So the white mark on the tire was right on the white mark of the line, which I would consider you're there, but it seemed like they made her get it over, which took the extra 2 to 3 seconds, but she got it in the time limit over the ending of the course. Anna Vaiusk had a solid run, but Nadia and Hannah were very fast, so unfortunately Anna comes away with 3rd place in her group. 14 points overall for her after 2 events, and I forgot to mention 12 points overall for Sandra Bradley and 19 points overall for Hannah Brock now after the first 2 events. And then you have Nadia Stowers in Group 3. So this group was a little bit smaller, fewer competitors than some of the other ones, and Nadia just super fast. As we mentioned, her back tire touched, slowing her down near the end of the course. Brock seemed to get across ahead of Nadia, but then they say she's about a foot short and make her lift it again while Stowers gets back for the win. And the replay shows Hannah Brock being really only a few centimeters short of the line, so unbelievable there. Nadia Stowers with a total of 22 points, starting off incredibly with 2 wins, first on the log and now here on the car walk. Incredible results for Nadia Stowers. So those are the results for the 82 kilogram and lower women in the 2021 official Strongman Games car walk. Let's have a look at the open women. So in the open women's class at the 2021 official Strongman Games car walk, we had Julie Rader in Group 1. She had the 2nd best start of anyone, a nice steady run, finishes the course and wins the group at around the 27-second mark. 12-point total after 2 events for Julie Rader. Stephanie Bisignano she was out to the best start in her particular group. she does not complete the course and then ends up coming in third after such a great start. 5-point total for her after 2 events. Cherry Muchindu was also in Group 1. She's representing Zambia, so it's awesome to see how international the official Strongman Games is. A tough fight for second place in the group, but she does edge it out. Did not complete the course. 8-point total after 2 events for Cherry. Then we have Jessica Putlin, who was in Group 2. So Group 2, she had an equipment malfunction right at the start. She was trying to fix the pins on the height of the yoke that was built into the car. There was some discussion about whether she chose wrong or it was a staff oversight. Turns out to be a staff oversight. They end up letting her go again in Group 6 later, but she ends up zeroing it either way. Brook Souza was also in Group 2, but I didn't see her compete. So they had a car ready for her. They had her name on the screen, but I didn't see her compete. So I think perhaps she left the competition after the first event because we talked about her, kind of giving the peace sign and talking in the interview after the first event as if, I'm done for now without saying so. So perhaps a one event and done for her. Group 2 also had Jane Lafour, and Jane struggled from the beginning, second place in the group, not much progress at all, maybe 2 out of 6.5 of the colored lengths for her. And then Group 2 had Jackie Oszewski, and she wins the group without completing the course. So one of the groups that struggled a bit more than some of the other ones here. Group 3 had Naomi Hadley. Naomi, third in her group, won about 4 out of 6.5 of the colored strip lengths. So a majority of the course. 6-point total for Naomi after 2 events. And we'll mention also Jackie Oszewski, 9 points total for her after 2 events. And Jane Lafour, 4 points for her total after 2 events. We then had Suhani Gandhi from India, and she was in Group 3 as well, 4th in her group. She struggled the whole time, unfortunately. 3 points for her after 2 events. Group 3 also had Jessie Niebuhr, and Jessie was the first to pick it up. I didn't see a drop at all. Nice short steps and wins the group with a nice smooth run. And she's up to 13 points after the first 2 events. Group 3 also had Jennifer Lyles, so she was out to the best start of anyone in the group, but lots of car wobble in multiple directions all over the place, a little bit past the halfway mark. She recovers after Jessie passes her and takes second in the group for 11 points total after the first 2 events. Gabby Dixon starts off our discussion of Group 4, and she staggered really momentarily at the very beginning, then absolutely takes off like a rocket ship. The foot movement was the fastest I've seen, blurry fast, the fastest time all day with the heaviest implement, says Big Laws. And if you gave me this video without me knowing and told me the video was sped up by 25%, when I saw that foot speed, I would have believed you. Her foot speed was that fast. 32 points total for Gabby Dixon. After 2 events, an incredible total. 19 points go to Anna Harzappa. She was also in Group 4, slow and steady, maybe 1 length short of the ending line, 3rd place in her group. Group 4 also had Rachel Flugel, and she was slow and steady as well, very close to the end line, but just not quite enough to get it that last meter or so, gets 2nd place in her group, a total of 24.5 points after 2 events. Olga Leoschuk, who we were all looking very, very forward to seeing compete at official Strongman Games, drops it right after Rebecca Roberts in Group 5. In her group, this was supposed to be the strongest group coming out of the log event, and it proved to be so. So Becca ends up recovering first, then Olga recovers with still a great time, ends up in 3rd place in the group at around the 18-second mark. So a great time, just a very, very, very strong group. Annabelle Chapman was in that group as well, so she was fast, but not crazy fast like Rebecca Roberts was, for example, but she stayed composed as the other 2 in her group were out faster than her, stayed steady, stayed composed, and passed them both as they both dropped it and won the group at around the 13-second mark, so a very, very fast time for Annabelle Chapman. And the aforementioned Rebecca Roberts, also in Group 5, was out like a rocket ship, but maybe got a little bit ahead of her or something because she had to put it down. She got 2nd in the group at the 15 to 16-second mark, but all 3 of the ladies in this group were amazing, amazing times. Then we have Group 6. Brita Maggard was in Group 6. She was 2nd in the group with a drop with only half a length to go. So unbelievable. She was almost there, giving up her 1st place with that drop. She looked pissed. She looked angry about it. And she was overtaken by the incredible Inez Carrasquillo, who was also in Group 6. who ends up winning that group at around the 20-second mark. So not blazingly fast, but technique good enough to get a good run there. Kept going smoothly after Brita had to put it down with only that half length left. And Inez, I didn't see her have a drop at all. Just very steady, very smooth, and lots of determination to get it through. Big Laws kept saying how he thinks she's more of an Olympic lifter than strongman. She does have about a year and a half of strongman. And if you want to hear her talk about it more, check out when she came on my show just very recently together with Erin Murray. So those were the results of the Open Women 2021 Official Strongman Games Car Walk. Let's have a look at the Masters Women to wrap it up. Starting off with the Masters Women in the 2021 Official Strongman Games, Event 2, the Car Walk, we have Melanie Constantino, who was in Group 1. This seemed very heavy for her. She did not get much distance at all, and 7-point total after 2 events for Melanie. Sue Taylor-Franklin was in Group 1 as well. She won the group but struggled, seemed to be leaning too far forward to me, so she could get a few steps but then had to keep putting it down. 9 points total for Sue Taylor-Franklin after 2 events. Christy Stefanik starts off the discussion in Group 2. It was difficult to get going, as it was for everyone, but then she lifted it again. Nice, small, steady steps to maybe 2/3 of the way, then no more, but everyone else struggled to even get that much distance at all, so decent distance for Christy. 10-point total after 2 events. Marive Barrios in Group 2. I didn't see anyone in the car when I got the right angle toward the end of the time, so I'm not sure if she called it early or got injured or didn't compete, but the Official Strongman Games IG says she got 3 points here, so I don't know what I missed. Maria Krazenska was in Group 2 as well. It looked like second place for her, but both she and York struggled pretty equally. It wasn't a very good event for either one of them. And York, as I mentioned, looked like third place for her, edged out just a bit by Krasinska. 0-point total for York and 2-point total for Krasinska after 2 events. Group 3 starts off with one of my friends, Kiki Burley Johnson, one of the sweetest people in all of Strongman. Kiki flew through the course, a great pick and run all the way through with no drops, wins her group, 14.81 seconds, an incredible time, 17-point total for Kiki after 2 events. Group 3 also had Erin Williams, so she was last in the group, only won about 2.5 out of 6.5 of those colored lengths. She was the only one in the group not to finish, an 8-point total for her after 2 events. Sandra Haeger was in Group 3, so she had a slower start than Kiki and Janet, but continued to accelerate and ends up getting second in the group. A very nice, solid run for Sandra Haeger. 14 points for her after 2 events. Janet McGraw, 13 points for her after 2 events. She started off pretty even with Kiki, but then Kiki pulled away. Janet continued with a solid run, but ended up 3rd in the group. Then we moved to Group 4, which had Heather Burgeon in it, and she was second place in her group, but only about 1.5 out of 6.5 of those colored strip lengths. Really struggled here. Carrie Ann Davis was in the same group. She's 3rd place in her group, not far off of the start line, so she didn't make a lot of progress either, but 17.5 points total for Carrie after 2 events. Samantha McLean was also in this group. She got the win in Group 4, finishes the course in one go without dropping it at all, while everyone else was struggling at the start line in her group, so really made a big statement there. 15-point total for Samantha after 2 events. And then Kelly New was also in Group 4, last place in the group, also struggling around the start line. 18.5 points, though, for her after 2 events. Then we have Aisha Ullah in Group 5, who absolutely ran with this car. Total control of the car from beginning to end. Best time of anyone at the car at this weight, Masters or 64 kilogram. The weight here, 550 pounds, by the way, just to remind you once again. Her time, a blistering 13.27 seconds. 35.5 points for Aisha after the first 2 events. An incredible total for her. And then Group 5 also had Sam Taylor. So Sam Taylor was 3rd place in her group, super close to finishing the course, but not quite. Couldn't get it with a last effort, but about 6 seconds left in the 60-second time limit. She has 27.5 points after the first 2 events, so a very good total for Sam Taylor. Group 5 also had Kelly Jones, and a great run for 2nd place in the group for her, but Aisha was blistering. So great runs don't look fast next to Aisha Ullah in this particular event. However, 33.5 points for Kelly Jones, an incredible total after the first 2 events. And then Jessica Rush, also in Group 5. She was last place in the group, but got about halfway down the course. A 26.5 point total after the first 2 events for Jessica. And those are our results for the Masters women at the 2021 official Strongman Games Car Walk. That wraps up our discussion and analysis and details of all the women's weight classes for the 2021 official Strongman Games Women's Car Walk. We'll see you again next time where we discuss the men's car walk.